Hi everyone. So I'm Lauren. I am the engagement officer for the British Dragonfly Society. We are a small but mighty charity. We only have 7 members of staff nationally, but we are backed by an absolute army of wonderful volunteers, including our trustees and county dragonfly recorders, who all play a really big role to help us conserve dragonflies and their wetland habitats that they need to survive and thrive. So I'm really excited to talk to you all about dragonflies. And if you aren't already massive fans, then I'm hoping that by the end of this talk, you will be. We're going to talk a bit about their life cycle, what makes them so special, their role within our wetlands, and of course, the species that are linked to chalk streams in Hampshire, as well as beyond some of our most common species that you're going to see first in spring. So, what to look out for in the coming months, using those surrounding wetlands or even your own gardens if you've got ponds. So dragonflies are amazing for lots of different reasons. So let's start at the beginning, and the fact that they are indeed flying fossils, as many people will say. Dragonflies actually evolved over 300 million years ago. So their oldest ancestor to date is uh, much older than the dinosaurs, which were thought to have come into existence about 245 million years ago. So we're going back uh, a heck of a long way. The planet would have looked very different back then. Continents wouldn't yet have drifted apart. The atmosphere would have been very different and contained a lot more oxygen, which might have been a part of the reason why they were so large. So the wingspan, it's thought of some of our oldest ancestors of dragonflies is around 70 centimeters. So definitely a very impressive size. Would have loved to see that um, in our modern day dragons. Size aside, which is obviously very different to what we see now, there are a lot of really impressive similarities with our current day dragons, which goes to show if something isn't broke, you don't fix it. And some of those similarities include their wing structure, that complex wing structure and venation, which plays a really important part in their um, traits and adaptations, which we'll see a little bit more of as we go through. So, despite those similarities, these days our diversity of dragons we put into the order Odonata. So, when I talk about dragonflies and damselflies, we collectively refer to both of them as dragonflies. So when I use that term, I'm often referring to both of these groups within the order of Odonata. There are in the world globally over 6,000 species, although there are likely to be many more yet to be discovered or yet to be separated genetically. These are just some of the most vibrant and diverse insects, and are just so wonderfully recognizable in their structure with their four wings, their elongated bodies, and their impressive and interesting flight. But how do we tell these two groups apart? We collectively referring to them as dragonflies, but they have structural differences that we're able to then say these are dragonflies and these are damselflies. So for our dragonflies on the left, we have when they're at rest and perching, they hold their wings out like an aeroplane. They're generally larger and faster flyers, bulkier species, groups of species, and their wings are also a different structure. So the forewing, which is at the top, is a different shape to the hind wing, which is a little chunkier at the bottom. Might turn this. we go. So the hind wing is a little chunkier here. And the other big difference is the structure of the head. So with a dragonfly, the eyes occupy most of the head. So these are two very large compound eyes, and they're almost all eye on the head there. Whereas for our damselflies, when perched, they will usually, most of the species, will rest with their wings folded all together. So there's four wings there, all folded together along the body. And all the wings are the same shape, so they kind of fall together neatly. They're a lot smaller and slimmer, with often a weaker or more delicate flight, which gives these guys away. And then looking at the head in comparison, you've got two compound eyes again, but they're held either side of the head. So they look a bit like a hammerhead shark with their eyes sort of either side of their head. So some structural differences that will be able to tell you straight away whether you've got a dragonfly or a damselfly. Well, we've got great diversity in the UK. So we have 46 species of dragonfly that breed in the UK, and then or are regular migrants. But we also then have a further 10 species that are recorded as vagrants, so coming over from the continent, that we get, especially along the south coast, uh, Kent all the way around to Cornwall. That's prime locations for a lot of vagrant recordings of dragonflies coming over from the continent. But 46 that regularly breed, and a lot of those are really common. Each species of dragonfly likes different types of wetland habitat. So small ponds to really large open water lakes, some that need moving water, so like chalk streams or even faster flowing rivers or canals. And then some that prefer ditches and bogs where it might not look that impressive as a water body, but is really vital habitat for some species. Our dragons play a really important role within the food chain of a freshwater ecosystem. So they're vital in eating lots of other insects, keeping that balance in place. They have a ferocious appetite and eat a lot of different flying insects, but especially midges. So that's definitely an important balance in a lot of our freshwater environments. And a good diversity of dragonflies will often indicate that we have a healthy wetland habitat. So they can be really good sort of survey indicators of when something is going right, and thus when there's a drop off in diversity, when something is going wrong, and something needs to be looked at in that ecosystem. And as we know, lots of our wetlands have been severely affected and changed over time. And it's vital that we look after our freshwater habitats, which won't be a surprise to hear for all of you. But it's not just for us personally in our usage, but all the wildlife that rely on them, especially dragonflies. And that's very evident in the way they complete their life cycle. So dragonfly life cycle is incredibly unique, and there are parts of it that often surprise people. One being how unusual they look in their larval stage, which is all underwater, and how long they spend in that stage as well. So we'll take a closer look at these stages of their life cycle, which will highlight how important freshwater is, especially for dragons. So dragonflies spend most of their life as eggs and larvae under the water. So these are some examples of dragonfly larvae. You have a damselfly on the left. So this is a large red damselfly, and a southern hawker on the right, which is a much larger dragon. So they have different structures under the water as well. Damselfly larvae are smaller and more delicate. They have these funny little tails, almost like three little fins on the back. And our dragonfly larvae can be much bigger and chunkier, and they lack those really elongated fins on the back. Sometimes have these little pronged structures that you can see here. As larvae, they are just as ferocious predators as they are on the wing. So they spend all of their time eating, basically under the water. It's not a bad life. And they use every opportunity they can to feed, using lots of different hunting techniques, from hiding in the bottom of the sediment and jumping out, or chasing prey around. And to do so, they fire water out of their bums and torpedo jet their way through the water, which is really impressive to watch. They eat lots of different things under the water. We've got a picture of a bloodworm there being caught and munched on. Yeah, water fleas, bloodworms, other insect larvae, snails, tadpoles, and even small fish for our larger um, dragonflies under the water. The prey is caught with what you can see here. It's not a leg or an arm. This is a modified lower jaw. So it's like a hinged jaw structure just under the head. And they can shoot that out at an incredible speed. And as you can see, this is folded here. So imagine that extending out to its full length, and it hooks into the prey and then drags it into their mouth. It's a structure completely unique to damselfly and dragonfly larvae, and makes them incredible underwater predators, and an
Yeah,
amazing, yeah, thing to watch.
quite.
Um, so I said they spend most of their time in this larval stage. It does depend on the species, but on average, the larvae spend 1 to 2 years in the water, going through a series of molts to become their largest size. So if you have a garden pond at home or in chalk streams, these larvae will be living in there for, yeah, 1 to 2 years on average. Some species, it's much less. There is a damselfly, the emerald damselfly, which will spend just 2 to 3 months in its larval stage. And then the other end of that scale is the golden ringed dragonfly, which can spend 5 or more years underwater in this stage. So it really does highlight the importance of the health of that fresh water. This is a vital, essential part of their life cycle, in which they need unpolluted, healthy, fresh water that's full of other aquatic life in order to thrive, molt through those stages, and then emerge as the beautiful dragonflies we know so well. And it often surprises people to hear how long they spend under the water, hidden away in this sort of secret part of their life cycle. But getting into the good stuff, and transforming from this into the dragonflies that we know so well. When our dragon is ready to leave the water, it's reached its fullest size. So this southern hawker on the right here is almost ready. You start to see the wing cases forming on the back, and then you know it's getting ready to leave. So when it's ready, it climbs out of the water onto some sturdy vegetation or um, structure near the water's edge. And holding on tight, it then redistributes its body fluids to push its head and thorax out of the back of its larval skin. Then comes the legs. It uses gravity, so it falls back like a bit like a trapeze artist to help sort of dislodge its legs from its case. And then it'll hang like this for a little while, getting ready, and then it'll reach up and pull its abdomen out of the final part of its larval skin. This process then leaves that skin behind. So if you have a pond at home or you're walking along a water body, you can often find these papery little, we call them exuvia, the skins they leave behind. So it's proof of that species breeding in that area. As you can see, it's quite pale in coloration. It takes a while to develop the colors, which it'll do so over a few days. And for those wings to open. So for a dragonfly, we talked about them holding their wings out. So once they've opened their wings for the first time, those wings will never close back again for a dragonfly, and it'll be held out like this. This is a southern hawker, um, which is the larva we saw on the previous slide. So you can see it's still quite muted in color, and it'll stay that way for a little while as it gains its coloration gradually over the next few hours and day. As you can see, the wings are really shiny as well. So they always are when they're really freshly emerged. So in spring, now April, moving into May, as you're walking by edges of water, sometimes you'll disturb dragonflies as they've just emerged, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They're taking their first, what we say, teneral flight, and the wings being so shiny and fresh will catch the light, and it's really, really glittery um, in that spring sunshine. So they will, yeah, take their first flight and then spend quite a bit of time feeding. So dragonflies, once they first emerge, can move quite far away from water. And sometimes we get a lot of questions about, oh, I've seen a dragonfly, but it was nowhere near water, or it was on the edge of woodland, and I don't think there's water around. It's pretty normal for dragonflies to disperse to feed, especially when they've recently emerged. The focus is just gaining energy. Um, so this is a four-spot chaser here. This male is using this perch, which they love to do. So all of our dragons have slightly different behaviors. So when they first emerge, as I said, they can disperse and they have incredible appetites as they did in their larval stage. Um, and so they'll be seen hunting other insects, particularly small flies, on sunny days. And it's only when our adults are fully mature and then ready to breed that they'll return to water to do that. So the males of quite a few species are quite territorial. This four-spot chaser is very territorial. So he's found his perch here. This is his, he's determined this is prime real estate, and he'll defend this little patch. So he will shoot off, chasing away males, and then chase after females that come into his territory. So if you do have a garden pond, or even visiting wetland sites, if you pop a little stick into the ground on the next to the water, like on the water's edge, it makes for a great four-spot chaser perch. And if they're around, they will use it because it's great uh, to look over their little patch in a nice high spot. So yeah, it's a great way to observe this behavior. So he's looking for a female. What happens when he finds her? Well, mating in dragonflies is really unique. Before males mate, they get ready by transferring sperm from the end of their abdomen, which would be here, into an area underneath the top of the abdomen here, which is a secondary genitalia. So it's like a separate space, which then allows this formation to occur because he needs the end of his abdomen to grab hold of the female. So for dragonflies, the male uses sort of claspers at the end of his abdomen to grab the top of her head. And in damselflies, it's the back of the neck of the female, which sounds very aggressive, but then it is up to the female as to whether she brings her abdomen up to meet the male or not. In doing so, when she connects here where he's already deposited sperm, then it means that they form this wheel or heart shape and complete the mating. This can last a few seconds or more than an hour, depending on the species. It can happen perched or on the wing, again, depending on the species. And then once this has occurred, the female is ready to lay eggs. So our females can lay hundreds of eggs over the course of a few days or even weeks. And each species is different in their preference of where and how they do this. And this is often dictated by the shape and design of the ovipositor at the end of their abdomen. So some species like to lay their eggs injecting them directly into material, either on, in, or around water. So this picture here is a female emperor dragonfly, our largest species, and she is injecting her eggs into the stems of water lilies. So you see that a lot with this particular species. Um, some species, it's not just injecting them into living matter, but they'll often use rotting wood as well on the edges of water, so on the banks. So it can be into sort of rotting organic material as well as living plants. But other species drop their eggs directly into water or flick them, which you see in this species, which is the common darter. The male often stays on guard to prevent any other male from mating with the female. And in this particular species, he goes one step further and he remains attached to the female and sort of gives her a helping hand as well, sort of flicking her into the water. Um, Most eggs then that you can see being laid right now will hatch within a few weeks. Um, and then it's only some species that are laid towards the end of the season in which those eggs will overwinter as eggs before becoming larvae the next year. But most hatch pretty quickly and then live as larvae in the water, as we talked about earlier, which brings us full circle on our life cycle. Adults in this flying stage is compared to their larval stage, just a brief part of their life cycle. So adults typically live 6 to 8 weeks if they're lucky, because there's lots of things that might get in the way of that. So so really short time in the air and much longer hidden under the water. So through their life cycle, they are displaying amazing adaptations for an insect group, which we can look at in more detail now. I mentioned a little bit about eyes and eye structure, which you can see really clearly here. We have a dragonfly on the left with ginormous compound eyes that take up most of its head, and then a damselfly on the right, in which it still has big compound eye, but they're on either side of the head. So those compound eyes have up to 30,000 lenses, so they have incredible vision. it gives them almost 360-degree vision. Not quite. I think it's thought to be about 320, but it's pretty close. And each part of their eye is has different functions. Some areas are very sensitive to movement, some to color. They have great color vision. They can see into the UV part of the light spectrum. Um, and parts of their eye for discerning flight patterns of their prey. These amazing eyes help them to hunt for their prey, avoid predators, find and defend territory, and find a mate. Um, so their vision makes them excellent at spotting uh, prey or friend or foe, but they combine this skill with their incredible flight. So this is a southern migrant hawker, which has these lovely blue eyes, bright blue eyes. They're phenomenal flyers, just incredible to watch. Dragonflies are larger dragonflies, can fly up to 30 miles an hour, but it's not so much the speed. I mean, they have the speed, but it's the agility that is incredible. They can hover like a helicopter, glide, they can fly backwards, they can turn on the spot, and this is all made possible by the structure of their wings. So each wing can be used independently, so operated separately, and each one has this complicated venation, but they're also corrugated as well. They're not a flat structure, so those things together make them both really strong and really flexible. So they're able to put those two skills together, those amazing wings and the eyes, to be able to actually track their prey. They calculate its trajectory and intercept their prey on its own flight path. So they're not even expending energy chasing. They know where that prey is going and they've already beaten them there. It's, yeah, incredible to watch. So it's thanks to these skills that our dragonflies have a 95% success rate of catching their dinner. They're actually the most successful hunters in the entire animal kingdom, which is just incredibly impressive. What they're going for, as we said before, are lots of small flies and often midges. Um, but they will take whatever they can catch. So, butterflies and moths, um, but also bees, wasps. I've seen a golden ringed dragonfly with a hornet, which I thought was pretty, must have been a pretty impressive battle. I only saw the end of it and the dragonfly won, but I'm sure it would have been amazing to watch. And sometimes other Odonata as well. I've seen dragonflies eating other dragonflies, or damselflies. So it really is anything goes, I think, whatever they can catch. But despite these skills, they do have predators of their own, um, especially when they're vulnerable, when they're newly emerged in that video we saw where they were, where the dragonfly is uh, just pulled itself out of its larval skin. They're really soft at that stage. They haven't hardened and developed their color, which means you often find birds hanging around to pick off freshly emerged dragonflies. You see it sometimes if sparrows have cottoned onto the fact that there's a really good pond and lots of dragonflies emerging, then you'll see a little congregation. But they're also vulnerable when they're perched on vegetation, like this large red damselfly has been grabbed by this newt. And of course, when females are laying eggs, they're vulnerable as well to being snapped up by newts or fish, or even great diving beetles. They can take a dragonfly off the surface too. Um, so all part of that circle of life. So now that you are hopefully in awe of how incredible dragonflies are, you'll be desperate to know where to find them, and where to in what conditions to look come spring. So, as I mentioned before, our dragonfly species will prefer different types of habitats, so smaller ponds or large lakes, that with dragonflies going over open water or using the vegetation in this on the edges and surrounding trees and scrub for shelter. And then, of course, a lovely wetland mosaic of ditches, wet meadows, and bogs will hold a lot of species. And then some of our species require moving water, which will bring us into our lovely chalk streams. So the kind of conditions that you need are sunshine. Our dragonflies hate to fly in terrible conditions, which is great as a dragonfly spotter. You need good weather. They'll be hunkering down in windy and wet conditions. The peak of activity is May to September, with some of our earliest emerging in April, but our busiest months then May to September. The best time is early afternoon, usually, on a nice sunny day, so it's warmed up enough. You get the most activity over sort of 16, 17 degrees. That's when you get, yeah, huge diversity on a sunny day. And then just find a lovely spot to sit, relax, and see what species use that area, which is great if you've got a garden pond because then you've got them right on your doorstep. But what about chalk streams? So if I'm sure it won't have escaped anyone's notice how important chalk streams are, especially um, in the UK. England has 85% of the world's chalk streams, which is a phenomenal stat. Um, and many of which are found then in Hampshire. So all the more reason why we should be making sure we're looking after them, monitoring them, checking what's using those areas. In the UK, a handful of our dragonfly species, can be found within this habitat. So using chalk streams, but not necessarily restricted to them. But there are a handful that we would associate with enjoying that environment, needing the moving water. And of course, chalk streams are often nice and shallow with a sort of constant regular temperature and lovely sort of banks and bays sort of built in that dragonflies love. Well, this particular set of species love. And then, of course, a greater diversity will be using the catchment in which that chalk stream sits, or the floodplains and wet meadows that surround them. So let's take a look at a few species that you will typically find on chalk streams. Two are common and fairly abundant, and then we have some sort of rarities, some little gems that you can find in Hampshire and a few other sites in the south. So there definitely is some southern species. Um, so let's take a look first at those that stand out and are fairly common and abundant. So we have two damselflies, two different species of demoiselle that we find along chalk stream habitats because they both really uh, like moving water. So they need that running water as part of their life cycle. So this is the beautiful demoiselle. We have the male on the left and the female on the right. They're a large damselfly species. So out of all of our damselflies, these are uh, much larger than the typical, really eye-catching. The they both have very fluttery butterfly-like flight, so they catch the light as they sort of dance over moving water. The males have this lovely metallic blue body and then these dark black blue wings. So there are only species with completely coloured wings. So they really do stand out. A really nice, easy one to ID for sure. And the female, very similar, but the body is more of a greeny blue metallic. And the wings are a little bit more translucent in this sort of brown, more of a brown colour. This species will typically emerge from May. The beautiful demoiselle prefers slightly faster flowing areas of a stream with sandy or slightly more gravelly bottom to it. So areas which are a bit more gravelly. Males tend to rest on bankside vegetation, waiting for females. They can be quite territorial, and you'll often see them uh, flicking their wings um, to both ward off males and attract females. The females lay a huge amount of eggs, about 300 eggs at a time into floating vegetation, particularly water crowfoot being a favorite. And they can often submerge themselves fully as they lay their eggs. So you'll see them hold onto vegetation and climb actually into the water and submerge themselves completely, which is very unusual to watch. So closely related and often even more commonly seen along chalk streams is the banded demoiselle. So this is our other species of demoiselle. Um, and they are very similar. So you can see the male on the left here has a very similar colour, sort of bluey metallic body. But now the wing isn't fully coloured. It has this blue, black, dark spot, quite large spot on the wings. And then the female, again, similar in the body with a sort of greeny blue metallic colour, but the wings are much more translucent and sort of a pale green in colour. These guys are a bit earlier. So April, you can start to see banded demoiselles emerging um, along habitat like chalk streams. These guys like slightly slower flowing areas and prefer patches with more sort of muddy, silty bottoms. They have really similar behaviour to our beautiful demoiselles, where the males will flick their wings and have this lovely butterfly-like flight, which is lovely to watch over the water. And they'll make use of areas of tall vegetation. So like where you've got a patch of maybe like a nettle bed or some emergent grasses, they'll be hanging around in those. So those two are fairly abundant, especially the banded demoiselle. But there are some rarities that we find in the south of the UK and in Hampshire that are extra special. So this species is the white-legged damselfly. So it's restricted to the south of the UK. It's quite pale in colour. As you can see, it's not a bright blue. It's quite pale in general. And it has these really obvious, broad, pale legs, hence the name white-legged damselfly. Um, the adults tend to congregate in tall vegetation together, and they like slow flowing water that has plenty of sunny patches. So I think in Hampshire, there were definitely historic records on the River Itchen, and then currently present records along the River Stour, and then some additional sites in the New Forest between Burley and Brockenhurst. So there are um, really important areas in Hampshire for this lovely little species. Another rarity is the southern damselfly. This is further restricted again, and is a European endangered species as well. It is, as I said, really heavily restricted to some patches in southern England and southern Wales, so it's definitely a much harder one to spot. And it's very easy to confuse this when we have a lot of small blue-black species that would definitely keep you busy if you're interested in getting involved more in dragonfly ID. So it often comes down to very small features, and it is the case with the southern damselfly, which comes down to a marking here on this second section of its abdomen, which it has this funny little marking. It's often what we're looking for this species. Um, but they're definitely worth a mention because it's what makes um, some areas of chalk stream really special, as this species needs slow flowing water that has a relatively consistent high temperature. So those shallow areas of chalk streams, for example, and um, and around using sort of water meadows on floodplains of chalk rivers, which is the habitat we see them on in Europe as well. And then another that needs flowing water is the scarce chaser. As the name suggests, it was once scarce, and very localized, but we have seen this species increasing in its range significantly, which has been very exciting, with lots of records in the south of the UK, including Hampshire. So it's definitely one that you can see at quite a few sites now across the county. It's a medium-sized dragonfly, so not as big as a hawker or an emperor, which we'll look at more examples of. And they emerge in around May, so fairly early. The male is on the left with these steely blue eyes and black thorax and blue abdomen. And then the female on the right, very different, with this lovely sort of golden colour on the wings, a sort of ochre golden body with this black stripe running down the centre of the abdomen. So these guys really like slow flowing water. So we'll use areas of chalk stream or meandering rivers. And they tend to prefer areas with really good water quality and lots of floating plants. Um, and females then use that slow flowing open water to lay their eggs. So as you can imagine, areas of chalk stream would be perfect for that. So those are some specialist species that in which there were a few that were fairly abundant and some real little rarities in there. And all of them preferring flowing water. But of course, surrounding our chalk streams, we have mosaics of beautiful wetlands as well as garden ponds, where you'll see a diversity of insects that, especially dragonflies, then that are using that standing water. So I thought I'd cover some of the most common species that you're going to see in April and May. So the first thing that you're going to find, especially on garden ponds, is the large red damselfly. So this is a really easy one to spot. It's the first one to show up. Lovely black and red with these bits of yellow. Really easy one to spot. And the sort of bringer of the dragonfly season. This is the guy that's ringing in the start. Of our little blues and blacks, which we have quite a few species, the first is usually the azure damselfly. So uh, all of our little blues and blacks have different patterns of blue and black that we use to tell them apart. So the azure has a thin little blue stripe here compared to our other species, which can be much thicker. So we're looking for a little stripe here. And this little black spur. So again, as I said, I know that's a very small feature. So telling our little blues and blacks apart can be tricky and it takes a while to get your eye in. But this is an example of one that you'll see first turning up um, in April and May. And then of our dragons, the first ones to show up, it's usually the hairy dragonfly is the first. Often emerging in April. So it's our only sort of what we call mosaic hawker to be on the wing at that time. Um, so you often can't confuse it with another hawker. They're only around at the early part of the season. Gets its name because they're quite fluffy on the thorax. You can see the male here, and then a male and female uh, on the right, and you can see in profile that sort of fluffy, furry hair, and underneath as well. Um, so these guys, yeah, are the first sort of large dragonfly to see. Lovely greens on the side of the thorax and the blue spots down the abdomen. But it's time of year that really dictates this particular species. And then we have two chasers, which are really distinctive, really striking, lovely species to find. So this is the broad-bodied chaser with the male on the left and the female on the right. All chasers, so we have a group of species chasers. All chasers have dark wing bases. It's a pretty good ID tip. If you see dark wing bases like this, you know you've got a chaser. The broad bodied, the male is this lovely powder blue with yellow spots down the side, and the female is this lovely golden colour. Much like the four spot chaser that we saw earlier, which is on my next slide, they're they like to perch and are quite territorial in the same way. This is usually the first species that turns up when you dig a new garden pond as well. They're really inquisitive and they find new ponds very quickly. So again, April and May, and joining them is a second chaser, as we saw in the video earlier, the four spot chaser. So both sexes have this lovely golden colour and this sort of almost like a cracked appearance on the abdomen here. Dark wing bases again because we have a chaser and a spot in the middle of each wing, making them a four spot chaser. So I've talked a few times about garden ponds, how great it is to watch dragonflies from home. So that is something we can all do. It's within our power to create new habitat, not just for dragonflies, but putting a pond in your garden is the best thing you can do for wildlife on the whole. We've lost so many ponds over the last, I think the statistic is 1 million ponds over the last 100 years or something staggering like that. So digging a new pond can replace that habitat. It's a really exciting process. We have a resource on our website on how to create your own garden pond. which takes you right through from the planning, where to put your pond, how big to make it, how to use a liner, what liners to use, as well as help with pond plants and pond maintenance then into the future. The bigger the pond, the better. As you can imagine, the larger the pond, the uh, more species it will hold. So 17 species of dragonfly have been recorded using a garden pond. So you could have that much of diversity in your own back garden. But any space and any water in your garden will provide vital habitat. So container ponds are brilliant when you can't put spades in the ground. Um, I love this middle one. This boat is one of my favorites. It's actually in someone's front garden, which I think is a great use of a front garden as well. If you have pets or young children and are worried about putting a pond in your back garden, then using a front garden for a pond is a cracking idea. And this little whiskey barrel on the right has regularly has damselflies emerging from it. So that picture is taken from that pond. So plenty of action, even in a small space. And of course, backing that space with gardening for insects in general. So providing lots of uh, diversity of native flowers means you're bringing loads of insects in, which of course then is a lovely buffet for dragonflies, as harsh as that sounds. But you'll attract everything in and create a really balanced ecosystem in your space. And if you are watching dragonflies, whether that's in your garden, on your local chalk stream or nature reserve or wetland, then and you're interested in learning a little bit more about what they are, then we've got loads of resources on our website that can help guide you through identifying species and information on there on how you can share that with us. So we collect all of our records through iRecord, which you can use on a computer or as an app on your phone. And all of those records are verified by an expert, so our county dragonfly recorders, as I mentioned before, who do an amazing job at going through all the records that come in for their county. And then they all get fed into our massive database. So every record that gets put in gets used to help inform us of where we need to work. Where are our rare species? Where are our populations changing? Why are they changing? And it's a really important tool for us to have in the face of climate change, where we can map how species are moving across the UK in response to our changing climate. So do give us a follow on social media. We post a lot about identifying dragons on there, and you can send us a message with your dragonfly pictures. Um, and then on our website, as I said, lots more resources, and you can find out how you can join us at events or become a member or download some of our resources to help you figure out, as I said, what dragonfly you have or how to create space for them in your own garden. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Lauren. That was fascinating. I hope everybody enjoyed it. There's some amazing images there as well. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Lauren, we actually have some questions as well. I think we'll just stop the recording and then
Yeah.
we'll just move over onto the questions.